Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for September 11th. This week is all about clarity, action, and devotion, because this week you'll have opportunities to actually move forward with things. And this week I have a sense that it'll feel almost as if a fog has been lifted and the sunshine comes out and you're like, all right, I know what I need to do and I have the capability to do it. So after the month that we've had, the craziness, and especially the last week, I think that this will be a welcome sense of relief and again, a sense of clarity as well. So I'm excited to share the astrology of the week with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So lots happening with Venus this week. We have Venus, which is the planet of love, money, beauty, sex. And most importantly, it's the planet that rules over our values. It's what we're attracted to. And this is why Venus rules all of these things, because it's these things, relationships and harmony and aesthetic soothing and sensual enjoyment, all of these things we're drawn to. And we're drawn to them because of what it is that we value. So if we value intelligence, we're drawn to people and situations that emulate that. If we're drawn to a feeling of nurturing or safety and comfort, we're drawn to those kinds of environments. And so we'll have opportunities this week to explore what it is that we're drawn to and to get really clear on it. This week, Venus is making aspects with Saturn, Jupiter, and Uranus. And the biggest thing, there is a lot of Saturn energy this week, is too, because we also have the Sun in Virgo squaring Saturn in Sagittarius. And so don't be afraid of Saturn, but I want you to use Saturn this week. So Venus is values, right? So already, because Venus is making all of these aspects to these outer planets, we want to get very clear on what it is that is important to us. So, and I'll have some tips for you on how to move through this, but I just want to set that right there for a second. So values, being clear on what it is that is important to you and what is a priority is very important. Along with that, Saturn actually allows for devotion. Saturn allows for us to commit to what it is that's important. And so this week it could go a few different ways. Sometimes people don't like Saturn energy. In our culture, we associate Saturn with time and restriction and limitation and sometimes even loss, but that's a little bit more Pluto than Saturn. But Saturn can bring up these qualities. It can bring up a feeling of limitation. It can bring up or reflect a feeling of hopelessness or doubt or grief or even like things like depression and this kind of thing. So I say that not because that will happen to you, but that's a potential for Saturn when it feels like we can't do anything, when it feels like we're too restricted and there are no options to move forward. And so the way to work around that is to just do what it is that you like, to do literally whatever it is that you can in the existing moment. And so the high side of this, what I want you to know is that when you engage with what it is that needs to be done, then that's when Saturn brings the gifts. Because when you commit, when you are devoted to what it is that you value, Venus, what it is that you value, you can actually make a lot of progress with Saturn. It is slowly over time kind of progress, but this is a week where Saturn helps us build things. It helps us to create a solid foundation. And so it's just like anything from building a relationship to building a house to building a successful career. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start at the foundation. So I just want you to keep that in mind. This week is definitely more about the foundation and getting very clear on that and working on that foundation. So that leads me to the tips for this week. Tip number 1 is to get very clear on your values. And so this is Venus, has Venus written all over it. This has to be number 1, because if you are placing your values, like if you're asking other people what you should do, or if you're like trying to like read and figure it out and like go to like psychic readings and like all of these things. That's placing your values outside of yourself. And so there are many different ways to do this. You can do this through journaling, reflection. You can even just write down a list of all the things that you value and the things that are really important to you in your life right now. You can look back at past journals. You can even just go for a walk and think about it. But I want you to have that, like whether you do that right now and journal about it, or if you just have it ruminating in your mind, that always has to come first. And so that leads me to tip number 2, which is to focus on what is most important to you. And I use this word important very intentionally because I can't remember where I got this from, and if you guys know where this is from, tell me. I remember reading in a book somewhere that we prioritize our life based on what's important and what's urgent. And often the things that are urgent are not necessarily important. They're time sensitive, but they may not be as important. And so this is a good example of this is if someone contacts you and says they want you to do a favor for them and they need something, like whether it is a ride or they need your help or they need advice, that may be urgent, but is that important to you? Is it something that needs your attention right now over something else that is more important, like maybe a work project or taking care of a family member or writing a book that is like not time sensitive, but that's really important to you, something like that. And so of course this all depends on the nature of your relationships and your time and what it is that is important to you right now. That's why we started with tip number 1, to get clear on your values. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. This week is what is important to you. And then tip number 3, before I give you tip number 3, I want to read you a quote that goes along with all of these things. So this is from an excellent book called, appropriately, Do the Work by Steven Pressfield. So just like a short, quick, it's super easy read, big word, not big words, but like, it's an easy text to read. It's not dense. So this book is basically all about doing the work. If you have a problem with procrastination, he's a great author, Steven Pressfield, and this is called Do the Work. So he says, instead we want to work from the self, that is from instinct and intuition, from the unconscious. When an artist says, trust the soup, she means let go of the need to control, which we can't do that anyway, and to put your faith instead in the source, the mystery, the quantum soup. The deeper the source we work from, the better our stuff will be, and the more transformative it will be for us and for those we share it with. And so I love this so much because this speaks to getting clear on what it is that you value. It speaks to getting deep in there and working from there instead of trying to look outward for the expectation of what needs to be done. It's starting on the inside. And then that leaves me to tip number 3, to do the work. So this sounds simple, but it's just like, what is it that you need to do? And I know that it can be overwhelming, especially when we have a lot of Saturn energy. It feels like we have these big projects. But it's like, what do you need to do like right now, like this hour, this moment? And that might be like getting up and taking a shower. It might be making yourself breakfast. It might be something very simple, but what's important is taking action and doing the work. So that being said, put this into practice right now. Leave me a comment below and let me know, what is it that you're gonna do, whether it's today or this week. What does it look like for you to do the work this week? So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend. I love getting these messages out to as many people as possible. And then other ways that I can support you are, if you want to get way more into this astrology and totally geek out on it, you can listen to the podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. It's called the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. And I'll have a link down below to the iTunes link. And then of course I do readings as well. So I'm offering a few different other readings. I've noticed that A lot of people are wanting some like little mini short things, and so I'll have some other options for you guys. I'll have that linked down below on how to access those. So until next week, I'm sending you lots of love and wishing you an amazing week. Namaste.